Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our review of This Is Us Season 6, Episode 12. This is Toby, the 100th episode of the show.
Yep.
We have a special guest who is joining us
Oh,
here, and
hello, bud.
yeah, Coco Vanderwolf. She was very, very emotional after this episode, and she needed some time to sort of talk through it with everybody. She's just also here to tell everybody to help us get to 60,000 subscribers.
Yeah, we are so close to 60,000 subscribers. It's really amazing. We're super excited about it. So, if you like This Is Us, we are covering it here every single week. We have 2 videos every week. We have a preview, we have a review, and then we have a lot of other stuff that's going to be coming up after This Is Us. So, hit that subscribe button and stick around.
Yeah, and like one thing in particular that's really less than a week away now is Better Call Saul. And I think if you have watched the channel as of late, you know how much we love this show, how
Oh,
eager we
yeah.
are to get into all of that.
Oh, yeah. Okay, let's get into this episode because there was, some pretty big reveals, some stuff that everyone's been theorizing about, and then there was a lot of stuff that was crammed into this episode.
Yeah.
But we're going to start with some of the tidbits. So, one of the big theories out there was that Kate was dead in the future. And for me, I just didn't understand that theory. I just didn't think that they were going to kill her off, especially after we saw Rebecca make her the power of attorney once Miguel is no longer able to take care of those needs. I just didn't think, because I think they're going to kill off Miguel, and I didn't think that they're going to kill off both of her power of attorneys. We have seen Kate now in the far future with Jack Damon as an adult. She is alive.
I gotta say first and foremost that Kate and Toby, they've aged really well, all things considered here, because this is like a couple of decades later, and they still look good. And this is the first, I guess, members of the big three that we like know for sure are still alive, like all the way down the road. It's an exciting reveal. It's a great thing to know. I mean, kind of like you though, I never thought that Kate was dead. It just sort of felt like one of those things that they were intentionally just lingering on to make sure people still had something to be excited or wonder about.
Yeah, one of the other theories that was out there that I thought might have been true is that they were going to reveal some sort of major weight loss for Kate. That's not the case either. I mean, I know that we've seen Chrissy online and she has lost some weight. So that's why I was kind of like, okay, if the actress is losing weight, then maybe that's where they're going with this reveal. That is not the reveal either. Really, I think the big reveal was just to show that Kate and Toby's story isn't over, as she said in this, that on their divorce day, she was like, our story isn't over. We're still going to be in each other's lives. We still have story to tell. It's just not with us together. And that's what it revealed at the end. Yes, they are always going to be in each other's lives. They have children together.
Yeah, I think that was the message that they really wanted to get across, and I think this episode was really emotional in a lot of ways. Where I went on a real roller coaster of being just like absolutely devastated and depressed at times to feeling a little bit more hope and happiness towards the end. But like, this is not an episode I'm probably going to rewatch anytime soon, just because it was so tough and raw and painful.
Yeah, I mean, it was a roller coaster. We did get to this end where we saw Kate and she's happy with Philip, and Toby, he's met someone too and he's still with her and very happy with her, and they've both gone to see their son perform. And he said something that was kind of strange when they were both there, where he was like, "Oh, you're both here together." And I was kind of like, they just showed us a montage of sort of through a few of the years where we saw, Philip be like, "Hey, Toby, you want a plate? Yeah, sure, I'll stick around. Oh, it's a birthday. Happy birthday." And then all of that. And they're all together. That it's just kind of like, did Jack miss that his family was actually all together?
This is the part of the ending that actually just really confused me and almost, I want to say, hurt me in a way, because I was feeling hopeful after we saw Toby find someone and after it
Yeah.
started to see like both of them were going to be like legitimately happy in the future, but then why would Jack Damon say that? Because I know
Yeah.
we saw that montage of, Toby over at their place and everybody's
Yes.
getting along, but we also didn't see like a good 15 years of, Jack Damon's life in between all of that. And so I came out of this having like this legitimate fear that something else terrible happened in that time and that Kate and Toby weren't around each other. I'm trying not to think about it. I'm trying to just act like it was just weird writing to have Jack say that and have that be it.
Yeah, it was strange. Like, I understand him as, a very young
Yeah.
kid that was trying to make his parents stay together, throwing his toy in the toilet to be like, hey, you guys don't have to fight anymore. Now you got to help me, sort of thing. And we do see Toby 10 years in the future where Jack would probably be like 12 or
Mhm.
13. He's at Rebecca's deathbed, which makes sense because they're still family.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, is there like 8 or 9 years where they're not together? I think it was just kind of a misstep with that line, but I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know.
The real This Is Us is the story we all want it
All
to be.
right.
This is the story that I am deciding for this because I don't want to be sad.
Okay, this was also a little bit of a weird thing
Okay.
for me, which was that Toby called Kate hours before she's about to walk down the aisle. Listen. If I'm getting married and my ex-husband is calling me right before the wedding, his life better be burning to the ground. This is not the time for this. Like, I think that conversation needed to happen, but not while she's in her wedding dress and she's about to walk down the aisle on her wedding day. Like, it felt like, I know I'm probably going to get roasted for this in the comments, but it was a very selfish move for Toby to pick up that phone and sort of unload this on her to be like, you were right. I was thinking back to our, divorce day and whatever. I'm just like, okay, man, like I get you're in your feelings, but not on her wedding day, an hour before her wedding. It could have waited until afterwards. You could have had that epiphany and been like, maybe I'm not going to do this to her today.
I think Toby is someone who doesn't necessarily, for whatever reason it is, he doesn't always think through how someone is going to react. He sort of just projects his own feelings about something onto other people. And my guess with all of this, because I do think this was not the right time for him to do this, and I think it was the wrong move. I'm guessing he probably thought, okay, I'm gonna tell her that she was right this whole time. I know what I said to her, which is just that, I'm never going to feel any different and all of that. And this is going to help release her of that concern. But it's just like, dude, I promise you, this is not the thing that Kate is thinking about right before she walks down the aisle. I think she would be relieved to hear it at some point. But here's an idea, Toby. Why don't you just like, I don't know, go out and get a coffee a week after the fact or something and just like tell her at that there are probably 200 better venues to have this conversation.
Okay, so here's a little bit of my beef with this episode is that it feels like we have had
Yes.
3 episodes of Kate and Toby breaking up, and
Yeah.
we've had basically 2 seasons of their relationship deteriorating, and then 3 full episodes of their breakup.
Yeah.
And then we had 1 episode, this episode, of sort of the wrap up of how Kate ends up being happy. So we were on this very long journey of this disintegration of her life,
Yes.
of her relationship, of her happiness. And then they jammed all of her happiness into this 1 episode, and it just didn't work for me. There was some good moments like their first date where Kate was saying to him, listen, I just got out of a relationship. I ended my marriage with a man that I love very much, but we didn't talk about the hard things. We didn't have those hard conversations. And that's why I think it didn't work out. I agree. That probably is why it didn't work out. One of the reasons. And that she's like, okay, so right from date 1, we're going to have these conversations because I've watched you, Philip, go through all these, beautiful thin women, and now you're here with me. What is going on with this? And I think his answer was very touching, and it made a lot of sense, where he was just like, I'm here with you because I'm looking to be happy, and this is what's happened in my life. And we get some insight into him, but just not enough.
I think the biggest issue that I'm worried already that I'm going to have this actually with the remainder of this season. And so much of this just comes down from, like, our inherent love of This Is Us, where I think we all want to see this story continue for a long time. And we're really invested in these characters. But Dan Fogelman also said for so long, oh, there's a 6-season plan. But it feels like there should have been a 7th season where we could have actually explored some of this stuff more, like the like the Kate and Phillip relationship.
Yeah.
And it also gets into one of my just concerns after all of this, is that I know Toby is not one of the big three. I get that. I understand that. I know his story is not fundamentally the most important thing, but I think there's a really fascinating journey that we could have went on with him, where he sort of has to figure out how he can be happy within himself and how he can finally find that sense of contentment in his life before he goes and meets someone else. And that's not a journey that we really ever see on TV at all. And we just completely like yada yada all of that. And then Toby ends up meeting this person. They have like a little meet cute and a nice little one-liner back and forth. I was like, oh, that's sweet, but that's just kind of all we got with it. I don't even know if they ever even named this woman.
No, we got really ripped off on that. And I do understand it's about the big three, but Toby is such a massive part of this show. He's been such a huge part. That's kind of like, oh, we get this little tiny montage and this little cute exchange, and boom, he's happy. I'm like, okay. I feel like I needed a little bit more with that. And it's the same with Kate and Phillip. So we had their divorce day where they signed their papers, and then she gets this text from Phillip who's like, hey, you want to meet up? And they have this really fun karaoke whatever, and he's kind of like, hey, I just thought you needed a friend today. I'm just like, why isn't it Madison? There's like this whole 16-month period where Kate and Toby went through therapy and it wasn't working, and Kate wasn't taking it as seriously as she should have. Like, she's late for it and putting other things before Toby. And it's like, and then Phillip is the person who's like, hey, I know you just got divorced. You wanna meet up? I'm that friend. I'm where is that? Like, we didn't see that buildup of that friendship at all.
I think it could have been really, really important too while everything was going on with Kate and Toby and the therapy and all of that. Because my kind of impression of a lot of Kate's story in this episode is that, she wanted to have the family unit together for the kids, but she was having a harder time staying invested in the marriage itself with Toby. I think everything that happened with, the day that Jack Damon went missing, that really was a tipping point for her. And I think when she questioned whether or not they were going to make it, she meant that. And I think she was sort of in a different place mentally at some of that point than Toby, but we didn't have a chance to see her have those conversations really with anyone, whether it be a Madison or a Phillip. And I think kind of having like those moments during this difficult process for her would have made it all the more interesting and exciting when she does have that karaoke session, because I have so many questions about this. Like, first of all, you're gonna play Tub Thumping by Chumbawamba, which, by the way, this is like the perfect nostalgic song for like someone in that era, but still, you gotta have a really good relationship with someone to go up and sing that.
Also, I was kind of surprised by Philip's singing voice. He's in a music school. I was kind of like, okay, you must just be the piano man, because, like, wow.
Sometimes you know music theory and you just can't sing. This is like, here's a story that I should not tell anyone. There was a long time ago, I really wanted to be a songwriter, and I probably wrote like hundreds of songs, but here's the problem. I'm not a good singer, and I couldn't really try to figure out a way to have someone else sing any of my songs, so I kept trying, and at a certain point, reality just like hits you across the head, and nobody has had that sort of hit with reality with poor Phillip at this point, clearly.
No, No, I mean, I'm not going to say that all the moments with Philip throughout this episode just didn't work, because they
No.
did work. It just felt like it needed more room to breathe. Like they really jammed in a lot. They jammed in, the very beginning sort of a friendship, no friendship development. Then all of a sudden he's the lean on guy. Then it's their first date. They've got a proposal in there. They got him even meeting up with Toby to discuss, okay, listen, like, I'm going to be proposing to Kate. So yeah, we're going to talk about how this is going to work as a family that's sort of all blended together. How does this work? What do you need from me, Toby? What do you need from me, Philip? That kind of a discussion that needed to happen. It was just, it got, the engagement party, we're at the wedding. It's 5 years in one episode, and it was just way too much. It needed a breath. It needed another episode.
Yeah, because like there are some really cool moments that I think are going to get totally lost in the shuffle because they're all sort of being juggled with all this other stuff. Like two of my favorite moments in this episode are, we have the mariachi band coming and performing in front of Kate and Phillip, and it was so funny, but it was also we got a lot of insight into Phillip at that moment because he was just like so uncomfortable with that amount of attention. And as someone who, one of my worst fears is going to a restaurant on my birthday and having them like come over and do the song and like do all that.
Ring the bell.
Yeah, it's like,
no, I hate that.
I don't want any of that. But it's like I wanted more insight into that, and I also just love Toby trying to teach Philip the rules of American football, which apparently he, for whatever reason, hasn't picked up on yet. It's like these were great, but they were jammed in.
I also really, really loved that moment where Philip was extremely nervous to propose to Kate.
Yeah.
And he's sitting on Jack's bed. Jack is kind of like, you got this. It'll all be all right. And he's like, all right. And then he proposes to her and he's included the kids with the signs. I'm like, all right, Philip has turned a corner, but we kind of went from this curmudgeon-y, angry, closed off guy to this guy with no sort of arc into him. He was just this, and now he's like amazing and happy and like what? There's a chunk of time that needed to be there that maybe we could have cut out some of the therapy. We could have cut out some of the stuff in the last episode. It just needed a bit more.
All right, now it is time for a ridiculous get off my lawn moment, and this relates to, we've even talked about this on the channel before, and I still don't like it. The new big three. Listen, I don't need a new big three. I already have the old big. This is sort of like we had the Karate Kid, and then they came out with like the next Karate Kid, and it was just sort of like, we don't need a next Karate Kid. We've already got Daniel LaRusso. Like, what is going on here? What is the point of all of this? Get out of here with your new big three. They are all special and interesting in their own way. They don't need to be directly put on that pedestal. I am done. Get off my lawn.
No, I agree. I completely agree, especially since there are 4 of these kids, which means that one of them is always going to feel like left out of this. It's the big 4 or get out. No, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we are going to talk about a few other things. So
Yes.
we're going to talk about Sophie. Sophie. So
Yeah.
she was at the engagement party and she is straight up married. So we saw that Kevin was going through like a string of women. He just couldn't figure out what he wanted to do. He's just not connecting with anyone. He sees Madison there, who is pregnant and looks like she is married. Elijah has a ring on his finger, a wedding ring. I couldn't really see what was going on with her, but I'm gonna assume that they're married at that point. And Sophie is married as well. She was there with her husband.
I kind of think, as I'm just sort of reeling into what's going on with Kevin in all of this, my feeling is just that he must still be in his feelings about Madison, and I think he's really struggling with this idea of settling down with somebody else, and I think with that in mind, he's sort of just looking for kind of, I don't want to say he's just like falling back into his old ways or whatever, but I think he wants to have attention from somebody, and I think he wants to have like some sort of romance in his life, but he keeps picking all these relationships that seem almost destined to fail, like he's just sort of waiting and hoping that something will open up down the road.
Okay, let's talk about that wedding scene because we've seen before sort of part of this whole Kate is getting married. And there was a big theory out there that this was going to be the renewal of Kate and Toby. That's gone.
Yeah.
That's not what it is. There's also been a theory that this is a double wedding and that because Kevin is reciting the Princess Bride that he's going to be getting married to Sophie in a double wedding, but like double weddings are not very common. I don't see that happening. They're also, I don't know, this is just me. It would be a little bit corny to have the two twins both getting married at the same time. I feel like Kevin would want something that's special for him, especially if he's marrying Sophie again, that it wouldn't be like, hey, let's just do our weddings together. Like, I don't think that's it. I think he's using the Princess Bride because that's not only special to just Sophie. This is also something that touches Kevin, and it doesn't have to only be the connection with Sophie. It can be Kevin's connection with Kevin in that movie, and that's what I think it is. However, we have seen this scene before where they hid the wedding rings, like the wedding finger of Kevin and Madison. This scene they did not, and so I had to really like stop it and watch it a bunch of times because we saw Madison holding a glass and pouring champagne in it, but the angle of it, I couldn't see if she was actually wearing any wedding rings or engagement rings. I was like, oh, she's got nothing on her hand, that's weird. Then I saw her close the door. When she closed the door, I didn't see a wedding ring, but again, it's kind of a little fuzzy, but she had the biggest diamond ring on her finger with the hugest rock that I was like, okay. So either she's married to, or she's getting married to Kevin, who of course has lots of money, or Elijah has some job that we don't know about, or he has saved up to give her that rock. It was huge.
All right, so there's a lot of different things that I was kind of thinking through when I was watching all of this and sort of just pondering it coming into all of this, because first and foremost, I think the biggest question I had was, what's the timeline between the engagement party and then the wedding itself? Like, was this a particularly long engagement? Obviously, it was long enough that Madison, at some point in between the two events, that, you know, she gave birth, had her other baby, and then we kind of see what happens in the interim. But at the same time, we've also not seen Elijah at all in this wedding. And, you know, if her and Elijah were still together, I mean, maybe he's off doing something else. It seems like Madison is attending to Kate in this moment, so that could be an explanation for it. But that's not the explanation that I'm going for here, mostly just because of a couple of different things. Number one, this is the first time that this massive rock that you mentioned has really been that visible. And so Elijah would have had to like gone and either gotten another ring or some point after the engagement party, which is possible. It does happen here and there. But, you know, I would think that they would have probably made a bigger deal out of it at the engagement party if he initially had that. So I think there's something a little bit fishy about that. Then we have floral robe gate that we have all gone into a million times. And then there's just the affection between Madison and Kevin that's just, you know, it's flirtatious. It's not like super clear that they're together or anything at Kate's wedding, but I just feel like, and just for me, I don't know what the relationship is between Elijah and Madison. I don't know if Elijah would be all right with her being kind of flirty like that with, you know, here is the father of her, you know, of her kids, of her first kids. And that's something that really makes me believe strongly, and I will stand on this hill until proven otherwise. I think Madison and Kevin are together at this wedding, and I think we will find out the truth very, very soon, fingers crossed.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of smoke around Madison and Kevin kind of being together because during this relationship with Madison and Elijah, she's been very respectful to like not be touching on Kevin or flirting with Kevin. She's kept a distance from them while she's building her relationship. But in that room, she is very much touching his chest and kind of pushing him out the room in a very flirty, familiar kind of way that I don't think she would be doing if she was married. But, everybody's marriages are different, so who knows?
I just think there's at least enough evidence here that something is going on, and I don't see a lot of evidence at this wedding from what we've seen that Kevin is with Sophie. And I mean, Sophie would have had to, gone through a divorce or something to even be available to him in that moment anyway.
Which would be the same thing for Madison. Madison is married at that engagement party. Elijah's wearing a wedding ring. He's obviously married to her. And then Sophie is also married and her husband's at that engagement party. So if he ends up, Kevin, with either of these women within the time of the engagement party to the wedding, which if I had to make a guess, I mean, let's see. Okay, so I'd say maybe 2-year engagement, something like that. 2 years, maybe 2.5, something like that. There is enough time in that time that either one of them could get divorced. Yeah. And, as much as I want to see Kevin and Madison together, it makes me feel really sad that within 2 or 2.5 years, she would give birth to another kid and lose her marriage in that time. Like that's a lot to go through in a very short period of time.
It is. And, that would be something that, once again, kind of like with Toby, I would want some more understanding of what went wrong, what her journey was like on the other side of that, what her life is like. But I don't think we're going to get any of that just because there's not enough time. There's not enough episodes remaining.
Yeah, no.
All right. The last thing I got to say here is that I know this could be my beating of the drum that I want more Randall and all these different stories. It's like we got at least a decent amount of Kevin in here, and Randall's just off, apparently just running for Senate in some shape or form, and apparently that is the only thing that he has going on in his life, according to This Is Us.
Well, it does feel like Randall's story's pretty wrapped up. I mean, everything is pretty good with his kids. Things are great with his wife. Beth's doing great at her job. He's moving forward in his job. He's not going to be the power of attorney for Rebecca, so he's not focused on that. His sister's doing really well. Kevin's doing really well. What story is left for him? And it kind of sucks because he's such a great character, and of course we all love the actor, but what else is there to tell?
This episode is like going to a very fancy restaurant and ordering a 20-course dinner, and like of those courses, maybe like 5 or 6 are just not great, but like 14 of them are really, really good. But because there are 14 of them, you can never make up your mind or even remember which ones you like the most because it's too much. You just need a few courses and just have that be it.
Yeah, like I said, we did not need 3 episodes of Kate and Toby breaking up. We had 2 seasons of it. I think they could have done this in like 1 or 1.5 and given us another, or at least a 1.5 here of everything that was going on with Phillip, or at least show us a little bit about the Phillip friendship. What I think is the reason why they didn't is I think they didn't want to show a friendship building with Kate and Phillip because they were worried that it would look like she was stepping out on Toby instead of it actually just being a friendship. Because just because they're friends doesn't mean that anything was actually brewing between them at that time. I mean, even Phillip said it didn't cross a line for him until she was already divorced and they were karaokeing. And that was well after. But, that relationship had been ending for a long time.
I think This Is Us just should have respected viewers and known that, we can understand the difference between a friendship and a relationship. Like, we're all discerning people. So they shortchanged that. They shortchanged Toby. We'll obviously see where things go from here. There's not that many episodes left, but hit that subscribe button because we are going to be here every single week talking through these episodes. Sharing
twice a week.
Theories, preview. Okay. If you guys are emotional now, wait till we get to the finale. That's all I'm going to say here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you here next time.